A millionaire visited his ex-wife to see their 8-year-old son and fainted when he saw him. The black Range Rover kicked up a trail of dust as it rolled down the narrow country road, the sun gleaming off its polished hood. Inside, Ethan Caldwell adjusted his cuffs nervously. He hadn't been back to this town in 8 years, hadn't spoken to Julia since the bitter divorce. Not since she'd walked out pregnant, refusing his money, his help, his name. But today, something had changed. Maybe it was the sleepless nights, the way his mother's last words echoed in his mind. You have a son out there. He deserves to know who you are. Or maybe it was just guilt, 8 years' worth pressing like a weight on his chest. The car finally stopped in front of a worn wooden gate with peeling paint. Beyond it stretched a small, neglected farm. The air was thick with the smell of animals and dust. Ethan stepped out, adjusting his blazer, his Italian shoes already collecting dirt. He walked toward the old house, but something caught his eye before he reached the door. A child, small, barefoot, shirtless. His skin was tanned from too much sun, his knees covered in scrapes and dry mud. He was sitting in the dirt beside a pigsty, poking at the ground with a stick, his hair a wild mess of dark curls. Pigs grunted nearby, one nudging the boy gently as if they were friends. The boy laughed softly, a sound that didn't match the scene at all. Ethan froze. The boy looked up. And Ethan staggered back. He couldn't breathe, his vision blurred. Then everything went black. The millionaire collapsed into the dirt. When Ethan awoke, the sun was lower in the sky and his head throbbed. He was lying on a couch inside the farmhouse, a thin quilt draped over him. The room smelled of old wood, cornmeal, and something faintly medicinal. As he blinked against the dim light, a figure appeared in the doorway. Julia. Her hair was pulled back in a messy braid, her jeans stained, her hands calloused. She hadn't changed much, yet everything about her seemed harder, wearier. You fainted, she said flatly, not moving closer. It's hot outside, and you're not used to country life. Ethan sat up too fast and winced. The boy, is he? Yes, Julia interrupted. That's your son. Ethan's throat tightened. He glanced toward the window, heart racing. Why is he living like that, barefoot? In the mud, with pigs? Julia's eyes flashed. Because this is a farm, Ethan, and because I do what I can with what I have. You do what you can? He looked like... He stopped, biting down on the surge of anger. You could have reached out. I've sent checks every month, Julia. You never cashed them. I didn't want your money, she snapped. I wanted peace. I wanted to raise him away from the lies, the press, the lawyers, your world. He stood, swaying slightly. He's my son too. I have rights. Julia stepped closer now, her voice a low, cold whisper. No, Ethan. You gave up those rights when you chose your father's empire over your family. You chose to believe his lies about me. Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. 8 years of silence. 8 years of believing she had run away without cause. He sat down heavily. I need to see him, properly. Julia nodded toward the back door. He's feeding the animals. If you want to know your son, you'd better learn what his world looks like. Ethan hesitated, then walked slowly toward the door. Outside, the boy was crouched near a chicken coop, talking softly to a hen as he sprinkled feed from a rusty tin. Ethan swallowed hard. Hey, he called. The boy turned, curious. You're the man who fainted. Ethan managed to smile. Yeah. I guess I was surprised to meet someone as brave as you. The boy tilted his head. Why would that surprise you? Ethan couldn't answer. He just stood there staring at the boy's face, so familiar it hurt. The same cleft in the chin, the same sharp cheekbones, but it was the eyes, green-gray, his exact shade, that cut deepest. The boy looked back at him for a long moment, then asked simply, Are you my dad? Ethan froze, and the words wouldn't come. The silence stretched between them, heavy and thick. Ethan's mouth opened, but no words escaped. The boy didn't flinch. He just stared at him, waiting, his small chest rising and falling slowly. Then, as if sensing the weight of the moment, he turned back to the chickens and resumed scattering feed. "It's okay," he said quietly. "You don't have to say it. Mom already told me." Ethan stepped closer, kneeling in the dirt, uncaring of the dust on his slacks. "She did?" The boy nodded. "She said my dad was a man with a big name and a big heart. Once. But that he forgot how to use both." The words struck Ethan like a slap. He felt the sting behind his eyes but held it back. "She's not wrong," he murmured. "But I'm here now because I want to remember." The boy didn't look up. "Do you even know my name?" Ethan's breath caught. No, he didn't. 8 years of checks, letters returned, silence. He had no idea what she'd named their son. His son. "I don't," he admitted, ashamed. "I'm sorry." The boy looked at him now, eyes unreadable. "It's Sam." Ethan smiled softly. "Sam, that's a strong name." Sam shrugged. "It was my grandpa's name. Mom said he was the only man she ever trusted." The implication stung, but Ethan understood. He'd forfeited his place in that circle of trust long ago. Still, he reached out slowly, palm open. "It's nice to meet you, Sam. I know who you are," Sam interrupted, brushing dirt off his shorts. "I Googled you." Ethan blinked. "You did?" Sam nodded. "You're rich. You build buildings and fly in private planes." "Mom said you're very busy doing important things." Ethan let out a breath, unsure whether to smile or cry. "I was, but none of it felt important anymore. Not compared to this." Sam tilted his head. "Then why'd you wait 8 years?" Before Ethan could answer, Julia's voice cut through the air. "Because he was afraid, Sam. Afraid of the truth." They both turned. Julia stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, her eyes sharp but tired. Ethan stood. "Julia, please." She walked toward them, her boots crunching over the gravel. "You want to know why your son lives like this? Why I never cashed those checks? You want the truth?" He nodded slowly. Julia pointed at the barn behind them. "Then come with me." Ethan glanced at Sam, then followed her. The barn creaked as she pushed open the heavy door. Dust swirled in the late afternoon light, but it wasn't the usual tools or hay he noticed first. It was a locked steel cabinet in the corner. And the look in Julia's eyes said, "Everything changes now." Julia knelt beside the cabinet and retrieved a ring of keys from her back pocket. Her hands shook slightly, whether from anger, grief, or something else, Ethan couldn't tell. She fumbled with the lock, then swung the door open with a loud metallic groan. Inside, rows of neatly stacked folders, a dusty shoebox, and a small cassette recorder rested on the shelves. "What is this?" Ethan asked, stepping forward. Julia didn't answer immediately. She pulled out one of the folders and handed it to him. "Start here." Ethan opened it and began flipping through the pages. His heart stopped. Bank statements, phone records, letters with his father's company letterhead, dozens of them. Many bore the same signature, his father's. "I don't understand," he muttered. Julia folded her arms. "He paid me to leave." Ethan looked up, stunned. "What?" "Your father," she said bitterly. "He offered me $5 million to walk away, to disappear. I refused. I told him I didn't want his money, I wanted you. He said I was a gold digger and threatened to destroy me." Ethan's knees gave a little. He leaned against the wall of the barn, trying to process. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I tried," Julia whispered, "but every time I called, your assistant said you were out of the country. When I wrote, the letters came back. Then the threats started. I had no proof until I found these." She pointed to the cabinet. Ethan stared down at the papers in his hands, feeling sick. So many lies, so many years lost. Julia picked up the cassette recorder and hit play. A voice crackled through the speaker, cold, commanding, unmistakable. "If you ever contact my son again, you'll regret it. Walk away, Julia. It's better for everyone, especially the child." Ethan's hands trembled. It was his father's voice. No doubt. He looked up at her, eyes wet. "Why didn't you fight back harder?" Julia's expression broke then, years of rage and heartbreak spilling over. "Because I had a newborn, no family, no lawyer, And no money. I was scared, Ethan. I did what I had to do to protect him." He sat down hard on a bale of hay, overwhelmed. The weight of betrayal was suffocating. His father, his role model, his business partner, had stolen his family from him. "I believed everything he said about you," Ethan whispered. "I thought you ran off with someone else." "I know," she said, "and I hated you for believing it." Outside, Sam's voice drifted through the window. "Mom? Are you okay?" Julia wiped her eyes quickly. "I'm fine, sweetheart." Ethan stood. "He needs to know the truth. All of it." Julia nodded slowly. "He will, but not all at once." As they walked out of the barn together, the sun dipped behind the hills, casting the farm in a soft, golden glow. Sam waited at the fence, watching them. Ethan's heart swelled with a strange, painful hope, but just as he reached for Julia's hand, a car pulled up the road, a black luxury sedan. Julia's face went pale. "That's him," she whispered. "Your father." The car rolled to a halt in a cloud of gravel and tension. The door opened and Robert Caldwell stepped out. Sharp suit, silver hair impeccably combed, his expression unreadable behind designer sunglasses. He looked utterly out of place in the rustic farm setting, like a predator wandering into a sanctuary. His gaze swept across the property, landing first on Julia, then Ethan, and finally Sam, who stood frozen beside the fence. "Ethan," Robert said coolly, removing his glasses. "I was hoping we could talk." Ethan's jaw tightened. "There's nothing left to say." Robert walked forward, unfazed. "I disagree. There's a great deal to say, especially before you do something reckless." Julia stepped in front of Ethan. "He already knows the truth about the payments, the threats." Robert barely blinked. "You mean the fabricated accusations you've hoarded all these years? I expected better than cheap dramatics." Ethan took a step closer, fists clenched. "I heard the tape. I read the letters. You lied to me. You stole 8 years of my life, of his life." Robert's expression remained calm, but his tone darkened. "Everything I did was to protect this family, to protect you. That woman," he gestured to Julia, "was a threat. She still is." "Don't," Ethan growled. "Don't talk about her like that. She raised my son with nothing. While I gave you the world," Robert snapped. "I built a legacy for you to inherit, and you were throwing it away on some farm girl." Julia flinched, but Ethan moved in front of her now, standing firm. "You didn't protect me. You controlled me, and now I see it for what it was." Robert's gaze drifted past them to Sam, who was watching with wide eyes. "So this is the boy." He tilted his head. "Poor child. You should have been raised properly, with education, discipline, and status, not in mud with pigs." Sam stepped back, his small hands curling into fists. Ethan turned to him, kneeling. "Sam, go inside. I'll be there soon." Sam hesitated. "Are you going to fight him?" Ethan smiled, sad and proud. "I already am." As Sam ran to the house, Robert turned to leave. "You're making a mistake, Ethan. If you walk away from the Caldwell name, from me, you lose everything." Ethan stood tall. "I already lost everything. Now I'm just getting it back." Robert paused at the door of his car. "She'll ruin you." Ethan didn't flinch. "She already saved me." The car sped off, leaving silence in its wake. Julia exhaled, trembling slightly. "That was the first time I've seen him in 8 years." Ethan reached for her hand again. This time, she didn't pull away. "Thank you," he said softly, "for protecting him, for surviving all this." Julia's eyes glistened. "He deserves better than both of us." Ethan looked toward the house. "Then let's give him that. Together." But inside, Sam stood behind the door, listening. In his hands was one of the folders he'd snuck from the barn, and what he saw in it would change everything. Sam sat cross-legged on the creaky wooden floor of his room, the folder open in front of him, papers spread like a fan. The sun had set, and only the dim glow of his bedside lamp lit the space. His small fingers traced the lines of typewritten documents, statements, letters, records with names he didn't recognize. But what caught his eye, what made his stomach twist, was a faded birth certificate buried near the bottom. His own name was there, Samuel Everett Dawson, but under father, the space was left blank. No signature, no printed name, nothing. He stared at it, confused. Hadn't his mom just said Ethan was his dad? Why wasn't it on the paper? Then he saw another name on an old court document clipped behind the certificate. It mentioned a man named James Everett Shaw. Sam didn't know who that was, but the word paternity was typed in bold. He heard a knock at his door. Hastily, he shoved the papers under his mattress. "Come in," he said, voice tight. Ethan entered slowly, holding a mug of hot cocoa. "Hey, buddy. Thought you might want something warm." Sam gave a small smile. "Thanks." Ethan sat on the edge of the bed. "Rough day, huh?" Sam nodded. "Kind of." Ethan sighed. "I know we've just met, and this probably feels strange, but I meant what I said outside. I want to be here. For real." Sam looked down at his cocoa, voice barely above a whisper. "But what if you weren't my real dad?" Ethan blinked. "Why would you say that?" "I just wondered," Sam mumbled, avoiding his eyes. "There's no name on my birth certificate." Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. "Julia said she named you after her father. I wasn't there for any of it. I didn't even know you were born." "But your name isn't there," Sam said again, more firmly now. "Doesn't that mean something?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair, heart pounding. "Sometimes it's just paperwork. It doesn't change what's real." But Sam wasn't convinced. If it's just paperwork, then why was Grandpa so angry? Ethan's breath caught. "You heard that?" Sam nodded. "I heard him say I should have been raised with discipline, that I'm poor like it's bad." Ethan clenched his jaw. He was wrong, Sam, about all of it. They sat in silence, the warmth of the cocoa now forgotten. Then Sam asked, "Are you going to leave again?" Ethan reached out, gently placing his hand over Sam's. "No, never again." But inside, a seed of doubt had been planted, not just in Sam, but in Ethan too, because the name James Everett Shaw was not one Ethan had ever heard. And Julia hadn't mentioned him at all. Later that night, after Sam had drifted into a restless sleep, Ethan stood in the kitchen, staring at a chipped mug of coffee that had long gone cold. The barn door creaked in the wind outside. Crickets hummed their nightly chorus, but in Ethan's chest there was only a deep gnawing unease. Julia entered quietly, barefoot, wearing one of her old flannel shirts. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked softly. He looked up at her, his expression tight. "Who is James Everett Shaw?" Her body stilled. "I saw the name on a legal document," Ethan continued. "It was clipped behind Sam's birth certificate. It mentioned paternity." Julia's eyes flickered, then dropped to the floor. "You weren't supposed to see that. Then explain it to me." She walked past him, pulled out a chair, and sat down slowly. "I didn't lie to you, Ethan. Not about Sam being yours." "But that document was from before the test," she interrupted, her voice raw. "Before I knew for sure." Ethan sat across from her, his pulse hammering. "You thought it might be someone else." She nodded slowly. "There was a night, after one of our worst fights. You had disappeared for days, and I was a mess. James was a friend from school. He helped me get home that night. It was one mistake. I told myself it didn't mean anything, but then I found out I was pregnant." Ethan swallowed hard, his heart cracking. "You didn't know whose it was?" "No," she whispered. "Not until I had the test done. That's what the sealed folder in the cabinet is. The DNA result. Sam is yours. 99.9%. He stared at her, waves of betrayal and relief crashing together. "Why didn't you tell me back then? About James? About the doubt?" "Because you didn't give me the chance," she said, her voice rising slightly. "Because your father made it impossible for me to even get to you. And when I finally knew the truth, it felt too late. You were already gone. He had already erased me from your life." Ethan rubbed his hands over his face, his mind spiraling. And James, does he know about any of this? No, she said quickly. He moved to Oregon years ago. I never told him. He has a family now. So this never touched him? Julia shook her head. No. Sam is yours, Ethan, no matter what that paper almost said. But Ethan wasn't sure anymore. Not about the boy. He already loved Sam fiercely. But about everything else. The lies, the secrets. The years lost in silence. Julia reached across the table, placing her hand over his. You asked me once why I didn't fight harder. He looked at her, eyes clouded. She squeezed gently. I was fighting. You just weren't watching. And in that moment, something cracked in Ethan. Not from anger, but from understanding. Still, in the shadows of the hallway, Sam had been listening again. He didn't understand everything he heard. But he understood one thing. There was a chance that Ethan might not be his father after all. The next morning, Sam slipped out of the house before either Ethan or Julia had woken up. The dew clung to his bare feet as he walked across the field, a folded paper in his pocket. The birth certificate. He couldn't stop thinking about the name. James Everett Shaw. He had whispered it to himself all night like a secret spell, trying to make sense of what it meant. If Ethan wasn't his real dad, then who was? And why hadn't anyone told him? He made his way to the neighbor's property, where an old woman named Mrs. Tilda lived. She was known for gossip, yes, but she also knew everything that ever happened in town. Tilda was already in her garden when he arrived. Well, I'll be. If it isn't Sam Dawson, what brings you here so early, sugar? Sam hesitated, then pulled out the paper. Do you know who this is? She squinted at the name. Her brows lifted. James Everett Shaw? Lord, yes, I knew his mama. That boy left town years ago, real sweet, went to college in Oregon. I heard he's a professor now. Did he and my mom know each other? Tilda gave him a strange look. They were close back in school, real close. Then he disappeared right around the time your mama started showing. People thought maybe he was the dad. But your mom never said a word, not even when folks whispered behind her back. Sam looked down, his stomach twisting. Did anyone ever ask her? Some did, but she shut it down fast, said it wasn't anyone's business. Sam nodded slowly, trying to keep his face calm. Thanks, Mrs. Tilda. Sam, she called as he turned to leave. Why are you asking about this now? He didn't answer. Back at the house, Ethan was pacing the kitchen while Julia searched the backyard. When they both realized Sam was gone, panic erupted. His shoes are still here, Julia said, eyes wide. He didn't take anything. Ethan grabbed his keys. I'll check the road and the barns, you check the neighbors. But Sam had already made up his mind. He was standing in the middle of the local library, staring at a computer screen, heart pounding. The search engine blinked back at him. He typed, James Everett Shaw, Oregon, and hit search. Moments later, a profile popped up. A college professor, same middle name, same city Mrs. Tilda mentioned. Sam clicked through the site, his hands shaking. There was a picture. A man in his 40s with wavy dark hair and eyes like his own. Sam leaned closer, breath shallow. This man looked exactly like him. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He found an email address and began typing. By midday, Ethan had searched every corner of the property and surrounding roads, his panic growing with each passing minute. Julia returned breathless from the neighbors, her face pale. Tilda said Sam came by asking about James. Ethan's stomach dropped. He heard us last night. Julia nodded, guilt flashing in her eyes. He must have. We both should have been more careful, Ethan snapped, his voice cracking. He's just a kid, Julia. He doesn't understand nuance. He's out there thinking he doesn't belong to anyone. Julia gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. Where would he go? Ethan's eyes narrowed. If he was looking for answers, he might have gone into town. The library has computers. Without another word, he grabbed the keys and sprinted to the car. At the small-town library, the air was cool and quiet, filled with the soft hum of fluorescent lights. Ethan burst through the door and scanned the room. At the far corner, in the glow of a computer monitor, sat Sam. Alone, staring at the screen, frozen. Sam! Ethan rushed over, dropping to one knee beside him. Sam didn't move. Ethan glanced at the screen. A photo of James Everett Shaw stared back at them, smiling in his faculty profile. Ethan swallowed. "Hey, buddy, I know this is a lot." Sam turned, his voice trembling. "Why didn't you tell me he might be my dad?" Ethan exhaled. "Because I didn't know until last night. And when I found out, it scared me. Not because I don't love you, I do, but because I thought I might lose you before I ever got the chance to really know you." Sam's eyes filled with tears. "He looks like me." "You do have his eyes," Ethan said quietly, "but that doesn't change how I feel. Whether we share DNA or not, I want to be your father. I am your father, Sam." Sam looked away. "What if he wants me?" Ethan's throat tightened. "Then we talk about it. Together. You don't have to go through any of this alone." Sam hesitated. "I sent him an email." Ethan's chest clenched. "Okay. He hasn't responded yet." Ethan nodded, trying to stay calm. "Let's go home." "When or if he does, we'll handle it together. Deal?" Sam studied him for a long moment. Then finally he nodded. Back at the house, Julia ran to them the second they walked in. She knelt, wrapping Sam in a fierce hug. "Don't ever disappear like that again." "I needed to know," Sam whispered. She looked at Ethan over Sam's shoulder. "Did he find him?" Ethan gave a faint nod. "He sent an email." They stood there, all three, tangled in uncertainty. And upstairs, Sam's computer pinged. A reply had just arrived. The email was short, only 3 lines, but for Sam it might as well have been thunder crashing through the quiet room. "Dear Sam, I don't know what to say. This is unexpected. Can you tell me more? James Shaw." He stared at it, rereading the words over and over. His hands trembled as he moved the mouse to close the window, unsure what to feel. Relief? Fear? Excitement? He climbed into bed, pulling the blanket up to his chin, trying to process what it meant. Downstairs, Ethan and Julia were still sitting in the kitchen, silent. The day's events had drained them. Ethan finally spoke, his voice low. "If this man wants to be part of Sam's life, what then?" Julia didn't answer right away. "We deal with it as it comes, but if you're asking whether he's going to take Sam away, I know, Ethan, not after all this. That boy is ours. Both of ours." Ethan nodded slowly. "He's going to have questions, and I don't have all the answers." Julia looked at him softer now. "Then we find them together." Upstairs, Sam lay awake long after the lights went out. He stared at the ceiling, 1,000 thoughts racing. Who was James Shaw, really? Would he want him? What did that even mean? Wanting a child who'd grown up without you? The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the hills, casting golden light through the dusty windows. Sam didn't wait. He wrote back. "Hi, my name is Sam Dawson. I think you might be my biological father. I found your name on a legal paper in my mom's stuff. My mom is Julia Dawson. She never told me about you, but I look like you, and I just want to know the truth." He hovered over the send button, heart pounding. Then, with a breath, he clicked it. By evening, the reply came. "Sam, this... I didn't know. I'm sorry. I remember your mother. She was kind, smart, and strong. I never knew she had a child. But if what you're saying is true, then yes. I want to meet you. I live in Portland. If you're okay with it, I can come to you." Sam didn't reply immediately. He walked downstairs, letter in hand. Ethan and Julia looked up when he entered the room, their expressions tense. Sam placed the paper on the table. "He wants to come here." Silence fell. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we should prepare." Julia nodded, though her eyes were unreadable. But what none of them knew was that James Everett Shaw had already booked a flight. And he wasn't coming alone. The next afternoon, a soft summer rain began to fall, turning the dusty fields to darkened patches of earth. Julia stood on the porch, arms crossed tightly over her chest, watching the clouds roll in. Inside, Ethan packed away the last of the documents from the barn into a fireproof safe. He glanced toward the window every few minutes, as if expecting something or someone. Sam sat at the kitchen table, tapping his fingers nervously, eyes fixed on the clock. Every tick echoed through the room like thunder. He said he'd land by noon, Sam murmured. Ethan nodded, standing by the sink, his posture stiff. Portland's 2 hours out. Could be traffic. Julia didn't speak. She hadn't said much since the message came the night before. She had barely slept. Now her face held that quiet kind of dread reserved for pasts that refused to stay buried. A car finally appeared on the road. Not a luxury vehicle, not a rental SUV, just a modest blue sedan. It stopped at the gate. Sam jumped up, heart hammering in his chest. Julia's hand gripped the railing. Ethan took a slow breath, trying to brace himself. The door opened. A man stepped out, tall, lean, with salt and pepper hair that curled slightly at the ends. He looked around cautiously, then reached into the car. A woman stepped out next. Young, early 20s, with bright hazel eyes and a cautious smile. Sam blinked. Ethan frowned. Julia stepped forward, her breath catching in her throat. James looked up and saw them. He gave a hesitant wave. "Hi," he called. "I hope it's okay that I brought someone." The woman stepped beside him. "This is Emily," James said, walking toward the porch. "My daughter." Julia's knees nearly buckled. Ethan instinctively moved beside her, offering silent support. James slowed as he reached the steps. "It's been a long time, Julia." She swallowed. "Yes, it has." James's eyes moved to Sam. They softened. "And this must be..." "Sam," the boy said quietly. James knelt slightly, just enough to meet his eyes. "You're taller than I imagined. You've got your mother's expression, and my chin." Sam smiled faintly. Emily stepped closer. "I guess that makes us half-siblings?" Sam's eyes widened. "Really?" Emily nodded. "I didn't know you existed until 2 days ago, but I'm glad I do now." James turned to Julia. "I didn't come to stir things up. I just wanted to meet him, if that's all right." Julia stared at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Sam looked between them all, caught in the strangest kind of storm, one made of old memories and new beginnings. But Ethan stood very still, because when he looked at James, something deep inside him stirred uneasily, as if James hadn't told them everything yet. They gathered in the living room, the furniture slightly rearranged to make room for 4 adults and 1 boy who sat perched on the edge of the couch like a bird ready to flee. The rain tapped softly against the windows, a steady rhythm that mirrored the tension in the room. James sat with his hands folded in his lap, his posture calm, though his eyes betrayed the storm inside. Emily offered a nervous smile to Sam. "You like drawing, right? Your mom said so in her email." Sam nodded shyly. "I draw animals and buildings sometimes." Emily's smile widened. "Me too. I studied architecture." James glanced at Julia, who hadn't taken her eyes off him. "He's incredible," he said quietly. "Just from the photos you sent, I can see it, the strength, the heart." Ethan, seated in the armchair by the window, said nothing. His fingers tapped lightly on the armrest. Julia finally spoke. "Why now, James? Why come all the way out here?" James looked directly at her. "Because I owed it to him, and to you. I left without asking the right questions. I should have reached out years ago, but I assumed you would have told me if it had been yours," Julia finished for him. James nodded. "Exactly." She exhaled slowly. "I didn't know for sure. And then when I did, it didn't feel like your life needed this kind of complication." James lowered his gaze. "It wasn't about what I needed. It was about what Sam deserved." That was when Ethan finally spoke. His voice was calm but firm. "And what exactly do you think he deserves, James?" James turned toward him, his jaw tensing. "The truth." "Whatever that may be." Ethan stood. "Let's not pretend you came here out of pure altruism. You brought your daughter, his half-sister. You're already trying to form a narrative." "I'm trying to do the right thing," James replied, rising as well. Something neither of us did when it mattered. Julia stepped between them. Enough, this isn't a courtroom. Sam looked from one man to the other, his voice small but sharp. Do I get a say in this? They all turned to him. He stood, his shoulders squared despite the weight of the moment. I asked him to come, I wrote the email. If I have two dads, then fine. But I don't want to be the reason you all start fighting again. The silence was deep and immediate. Ethan slowly sat back down. You're right. I'm sorry, Sam. James nodded, his tone gentler. Me too. Julia moved beside Sam, placing a hand on his back. We're all figuring this out. But no matter what, this is your home. That's not going to change. For a moment there was peace. Then Emily looked at her father and said, Should we tell them? James hesitated. Julia narrowed her eyes. Tell us what? James's face darkened slightly. There's something else, he said quietly. Something I only learned after I got your message. Ethan sat forward. James took a breath. Sam, you may not be the only child I didn't know about. The room froze. Julia's mouth parted, but no words came out. Ethan slowly stood from his chair, eyes locked on James with a piercing intensity. Emily turned toward her father, equally shocked. What are you talking about? She whispered. James ran a hand through his hair, clearly struggling with how to begin. Years ago, before I moved to Oregon, even before I met my wife, I was involved with someone else. Briefly. I had no idea she became pregnant. Not until 3 weeks ago, when I got a letter. Julia's voice sharpened. And you're telling us this now? I didn't want to bring more confusion, James said quickly, but when Sam reached out, it made me realize that keeping quiet wasn't right. Ethan's eyes narrowed. So who is this other child, and why do we care? James looked at Sam, then Julia. The woman, her name's Vanessa. She said she gave the child up for adoption, a closed adoption. She never told the father's name, but her daughter, she's been looking for answers. She found Vanessa, and she's found me. Julia's arms tightened across her chest. Are you saying this girl might show up too? She's already in town, James replied. I didn't want to spring it on anyone, but she asked if she could meet Sam, just once. She's 23. Her name's Lily. Sam looked stunned. So, I might have a sister and a brother. Emily smiled faintly. Half-siblings. But, yeah, I guess so. Julia stepped away, overwhelmed. This is too much. We're barely dealing with this situation. Now you're saying another stranger is knocking on our door. I understand, James said, but Lily didn't come to claim anything. She just wants to know who she is. Ethan crossed his arms. And what if she wants more? What if she wants a piece of Sam's life? James turned to him. Then we talk, like adults, and we protect him, together. Sam looked between all of them, his voice shaky. I don't mind meeting her. If she's like Emily, maybe it won't be so bad. Julia turned, her eyes red-rimmed. Sweetheart, this isn't just a playdate. This is our lives. More secrets, more consequences. Sam shrugged softly. But maybe some surprises are good. A knock on the front door echoed through the house. Everyone froze again. James slowly turned. That's her, he whispered. Ethan moved toward the door, pausing just before the handle. Julia took a deep breath, stepping beside him. Sam stood between them, his small frame tense with anticipation. Ethan opened the door. Standing there in the rain was a young woman with long dark hair and eyes the exact shade of Sam's. She smiled nervously. Hi, I'm Lily. I think we might be family. Lily stepped into the house cautiously, her soaked jacket clinging to her frame. Her eyes scanned the room, resting on each face with quiet intensity. Julia's wary stare, Ethan's guarded posture, James's quiet guilt, and finally, Sam's wide-eyed curiosity. She offered a soft smile. Sorry to just show up like this. I didn't know what else to do. Julia handed her a towel wordlessly. Lily took it, murmuring thanks. James stepped forward. Lily, this is Sam, and his mother Julia, and Ethan Caldwell. Lily's eyes paused on Ethan, something flickering in her expression. Then she turned to Sam, crouching slightly. "You're younger than I expected, and taller." Sam giggled awkwardly. "I get that a lot." They stared at each other for a long moment. There was something magnetic, some unspoken pull, a connection neither fully understood. Julia finally broke the silence. "How much do you know?" Lily stood. "Not enough. Vanessa, my birth mother, only told me a few weeks ago. She was young. She said she wasn't ready to raise me and didn't know how to tell James. She only reached out to him after I begged her to give me a name. One name." "And then you found James," Ethan said quietly. Lily nodded. "And then I found Sam." Ethan exchanged a glance with Julia. Did you plan to stay?" Lily hesitated. "I only came to meet him. But if you want me to go—" "No," Sam said quickly. "I want to know you." Julia looked at him. "Are you sure?" Sam nodded. "She's part of me too, right?" Lily's lips trembled. "I didn't expect this. I thought, I don't know that you'd all slam the door." James stepped beside her. "They're better than I deserve." Julia looked at Lily, her face softening. "You've had questions your whole life, haven't you?" Lily nodded. "Every birthday, every family tree assignment in school, every time someone asked, 'Where are you really from?' And now that I'm here, it's strange. I didn't expect a little brother. I didn't expect any of this." Ethan cleared his throat. "Well, you're not the only one who didn't expect things." Everyone chuckled lightly. Lily sat beside Sam on the couch. "So, what do you like? What's your thing?" Sam smiled. "Drawing. I want to be an architect, or maybe a pig farmer. I haven't decided." Lily grinned. "I like that, you're complicated." Julia and Ethan watched from the corner, a swirl of emotions behind their eyes. Things were shifting fast, too fast. But just as a sense of calm began to settle over the house, Emily's phone buzzed. She looked down, her face paling. "What is it?" James asked. She looked up slowly. "There's an article online. Someone leaked everything. The adoption. Sam. You. All of us." The room fell into stunned silence. Julia's voice was barely a whisper. "How did the press find out?" Emily's hands trembled as she turned the phone around, revealing the headline flashing across the screen. Our gossip site, known for its brutal exposés, had published a piece titled, "Scandal in the Shadows, Millionaire's Secret Child, a Forgotten Professor, and a Family Torn in Two." Underneath, there were blurry pictures of the farm. One showed Ethan getting out of his car. Another, far worse, captured Sam barefoot by the pigsty, looking up toward the camera. The article dove into speculations, timelines, and rumors, most of it distorted beyond recognition. And at the end, it named everyone. Julia Dawson, James Everett Shaw, Ethan Caldwell, and Sam. Julia snatched the phone, reading with widening eyes. "They mentioned my address, our full names. How did they get this?" Ethan's voice was sharp. "It has to be someone local. Someone saw James arrive and started digging, maybe even followed Sam into town." James's face was pale. "This is my fault. If I hadn't come—" "No," Julia cut in. "This isn't about blame. This is about protecting Sam." Sam's head swiveled between them all. "Are people going to come here?" "They might," Ethan admitted, kneeling in front of him. "But we won't let them near you. You're safe, Sam, I promise." Emily spoke up. "They'll call you, Dad. Journalists, maybe your university." James nodded grimly. "I can handle that." Lily sat frozen. "They know I was adopted. They named my birth mother. She's going to be furious." Julia placed a hand on her shoulder. "You didn't do this. You were searching for your truth." But in the back of the room, Ethan was already on his phone, making rapid calls to his legal team. After a tense hour of silence and planning, he finally spoke. "I've arranged for private security to monitor the road, and I'll get a cease and desist to the site, but this won't go away quietly." Julia crossed her arms. "What does that mean for us?" Ethan looked at her, then at Sam. "It means if we want to keep him protected, We have to control the story. Sam frowned. What story? Ethan turned to him gently. The one the world sees, the one that tells them you're more than a headline. James stood. I'll give an interview if I have to. Take the heat off Julia and Sam. Emily nodded. Me too. Lily hesitated. I don't know if I can. My whole life has already changed. I don't know how much more I can take. Julia knelt in front of her. You don't have to do anything. We'll take care of it. Sam sat quietly, then asked, Can I still go to school? Ethan smiled sadly. Of course, but maybe not this week. The room fell into a strange stillness. They had gone from strangers to a fragile, chaotic family in a matter of days. But outside, headlights flashed through the rain. A car parked at the gate, and a figure with a camera stepped out into the mud. The flash of the camera pierced the grey afternoon like lightning. Julia stood up so fast, her chair screeched against the wooden floor. They're here, she said, her voice trembling with fury. They're really here. Ethan was already at the door. I'll handle it. No, James said, stepping forward. Let me. I'm the one they want. Julia shook her head. They want Sam. That's the headline. That's the hook. From the window, Sam peeked between the curtains. The figure outside wore a dark raincoat, the camera large, lens long. He took another photo, this time of the house itself. Ethan cursed under his breath and stormed outside, the screen door slamming behind him. The photographer looked up as Ethan approached, holding out his hands like a peace offering. Mr. Caldwell, no need for hostility. I'm just here for a statement. Ethan didn't stop walking. You're trespassing. I'm on the road, the man countered. Public space. You're pointing a camera at a child's home. You think that makes you brave? The man shrugged. I think it makes me a reporter. Do you want your side out there? Give me an exclusive. The piece already has traction. Don't you want to control the narrative? Ethan stepped closer. You're not getting a word from anyone in this house, and if I see your face here again, you'll be facing a lawsuit so fast your editor won't remember your name. The man smirked, clearly used to threats. You rich types always think lawyers solve everything. Ethan smiled coldly. No, but I also have something better than lawyers. He reached into his coat and pulled out a card, handing it to the man. That's the head of private security for Caldwell Holdings. She's former CIA. You'll want to memorize that number. The smirk faded. Ethan stepped back. Now get off this road. The photographer hesitated but eventually backed away, muttering as he returned to his car. Ethan stood there until the vehicle disappeared down the hill. Back inside, Julia was holding Sam close. You didn't open the curtain, right? Sam nodded slowly. I just looked through the side. James paced in the living room. It's starting. This isn't going to stop. Emily added, the story's already viral. It was trending an hour ago. Lily stood quietly in the corner, her arms wrapped around herself. Ethan walked back in, wet from the rain. They're going to keep coming. Julia's voice was sharp. Then we make them stop. Everyone turned. I'm done hiding, she said. We'll give one statement, one, the truth, on our terms, and then we slam every door shut. James nodded slowly. Agreed. Emily looked up. I know someone, a journalist, fair, respected. If we talk to her, we control the spin. Julia looked at Ethan. Can you trust her? Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Let's set it up. But upstairs, in the quiet of his room, Sam sat on his bed, holding a sketchbook in his lap. He wasn't drawing animals this time, he was drawing his family. And he had no idea which last name to write under his own. The next morning, the farm was unusually quiet. The sky was clear for the first time in days, but the air carried a heaviness that none of them could shake. Julia paced the living room, her phone clutched tightly in one hand. Ethan sat at the table, scrolling through articles, legal statements, and social media reactions. Every headline twisted the story further. Every photo felt like an invasion. Sam watched from the stairs, holding his sketchbook against his chest like a shield. At noon, Emily's contact arrived. Her name was Marissa Chen, early 40s, calm voice, direct gaze. She wore jeans, a blazer, and no makeup. Her reputation for fair, hard-hitting interviews had made her a trusted voice in journalism. She sat on the couch with a notepad, a recorder, and a promise. "I'm not here to sensationalize. You have my word, but you have to be honest." They agreed. The living room became a makeshift studio. Julia sat between Ethan and James, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Sam sat on the floor, beside Emily. Lily stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, but alert. Marissa hit record. "Let's begin with the basics," she said. "Julia, can you tell me who Sam is?" Julia nodded slowly. "Sam is my son. He's 8 years old. He was raised here on this farm. And until a week ago, no one outside this town even knew he existed." Marissa turned to Ethan. "And you, Mr. Caldwell, are his legal father," Ethan said, "and his biological one. I had no idea he was born until recently. My father kept the truth from me." James leaned forward. "I'm the man who almost could have been his father. Julia and I, there was a brief overlap. But a paternity test confirmed Ethan is Sam's father. I didn't know anything about any of this until Sam reached out." Marissa raised a brow. "So why come?" James's voice softened. "Because I had a right to know. And because I wasn't there when I should have been." Marissa nodded. She turned to Lily. "And you?" "I'm James's daughter," Lily said. "Adopted. I only recently found my birth mother, and through her, James, I came to meet Sam, that's all." "And how do you feel now that you're here?" Lily looked at Sam. "Lucky." Confused, but mostly lucky. Sam looked up at her and smiled. Marissa looked back at Julia. "Why keep him hidden?" Julia inhaled deeply. "Because I was protecting him. From a world that eats people alive for having complicated beginnings, from powerful men who tried to erase us, from pain." Ethan took her hand gently. "And now we want to protect him by giving him the truth." Marissa closed her notebook. "And what is that truth?" Ethan looked directly at the camera. "That this is a family, imperfect, unexpected, but real. And Sam isn't a scandal. He's a miracle." Silence followed. Then Sam stood, lifted his sketchbook, and showed a page. It was a drawing of all of them, standing together on the porch. And under his name in bold, careful letters he had written, "Sam Dawson Caldwell." No one spoke, because in that moment he'd chosen exactly who he was. The interview aired that night, not through gossip blogs or tabloids, but on a respected evening news segment. Marissa kept her promise. There was no dramatic music, no flashy graphics, just calm, human storytelling. She let Julia speak plainly, let Ethan show his raw regret, let James explain his mistakes without excuse. And when Sam's drawing flashed across the screen at the end, the segment went silent. Only the image of that crayon family remained on screen for 10 seconds, framed by quiet music. By morning, the tone online had shifted. Thousands of comments flooded in, some skeptical, some still cruel, but most were supportive. People saw the pain in Julia's eyes. They heard the trembling in Ethan's voice. They saw themselves in the confusion and bravery of a little boy caught between two worlds. Julia sat at the kitchen table reading emails, from old friends, from women she'd helped quietly over the years, from strangers who said, "Thank you for telling the truth." Ethan leaned against the counter, watching her. "They're not tearing us apart." Julia looked up. "Not yet." James stepped into the room with coffee in hand. "My university's board wants a meeting, but they're standing by me." Emily followed behind him. "Someone made a painting of Sam's drawing. It's going viral." Lily entered last, holding her phone. "And Vanessa, my birth mom, she saw the segment. She texted me, said she's proud of me." Julia smiled gently. "Maybe this storm is passing." But then Sam ran down the stairs, wide-eyed. "There's a car coming." They all rushed to the porch. A sleek black SUV approached, not like the gossip reporters, not a neighbor's truck. It had tinted windows and diplomatic plates. It stopped at the gate. A man in a suit stepped out, holding a leather briefcase. He waved politely, then walked toward them. Ethan stepped forward, wary. "Can I help you?" The man smiled calmly. I'm not with the press. I represent an international family law group. We've been watching your story. One of our major clients has taken an interest. Julia narrowed her eyes. What kind of interest? The man pulled a document from his case. We believe Sam may have a legal claim to a dormant inheritance from a family in Europe, a powerful one. Ethan frowned. What are you saying? The man looked at Sam, then back at them. I'm saying he may be heir to more than just your name. He may belong to a legacy none of you knew existed. Everyone stood frozen. Even Sam, who just started to feel like he knew who he was, felt the ground shift again beneath his feet. The man's words hung in the humid summer air like a thunderclap. Julia's arms instinctively moved in front of Sam. What do you mean he may belong to a legacy? Who are you? The man smiled, patient and professional. My name is Victor Hollen. I represent the legal estate of the von Keller family, an aristocratic lineage based in southern Germany. The family's last heir passed away 2 years ago without an heir on record. Recently, the estate initiated a global search for potential descendants tied through less publicized branches of the family tree. Ethan crossed his arms. And what does this have to do with us? Victor opened a folder and displayed a printed document. James Everett Shaw's grandmother, on his mother's side, was born a von Keller. Her lineage was never formally documented in the registry due to an elopement scandal. But recent genetic archives have matched DNA through records obtained from your university's research program, Mr. Shaw. James blinked. My research assistant. I gave permission for ancestral testing last year. I thought it was just academic. Victor nodded. It was, until it wasn't. The von Keller estate matched your DNA. And since you're confirmed to be the biological father of Lily and a possible candidate for paternity in Sam's case, Ethan interrupted sharply. No, Sam is my son. The paternity test proved that. Victor paused. Yes, of course, forgive me, but your involvement in Sam's guardianship is also now part of the inquiry. Julia's voice trembled with a mix of rage and confusion. So what are you saying? That Sam could inherit? Victor nodded. The von Keller estate is valued at over $200 million, land, trusts, assets. If Sam is accepted as a legitimate descendant, even through extended lineage, he would be entitled to a significant share. Possibly primary heir status, given his age and lack of closer living relatives. Ethan's face darkened. We're not interested in money. He just found his family. He doesn't need a royal soap opera. Victor gently closed the folder. This isn't about money. It's about history, identity, legacy. You have the right to decline. But if you do, others may come forward. Cousins, claimants, with far less interest in the boy's well-being. Lily stepped forward. So what happens now? Victor offered a faint smile. That depends on you. If you agree, we begin a formal inquiry, a legal and genealogical verification process. It would take time, discretion, and, most importantly, your cooperation. Julia took Sam's hand and backed away slightly. We need time to think. Victor nodded respectfully. Of course, I'll leave my contact information. He turned, walked back to the SUV, and drove away. Silence fell on the porch. Sam finally whispered, "Do I have to go to Germany?" Julia knelt beside him. No, no one is taking you anywhere. Ethan added, but if there's truth in what he said, we need to know what it means. For your future. Sam looked between them. I don't want a castle. I just want my family. But behind them, in the shadows of the hallway, Lily stood quietly, her gaze lingering on Victor's card. Because her name might be on that inheritance too. That night, while the house was quiet and the others slept restlessly, Lily sat alone at the kitchen table, the business card from Victor Hollen turning slowly between her fingers. Her thoughts spun faster than her hands. What if this was her chance? She had grown up in foster homes, passed from place to place watching other kids get adopted, while she remained the footnote. Now, suddenly, she might be tied to a legacy with centuries of history and unimaginable wealth. Not that money ever meant much to her, but belonging, that was something she'd craved her whole life. She reached into her backpack and pulled out the printed article Victor had left behind. She had pocketed it when no one was looking. It had a family tree, faded, drawn in elegant script. On it, toward the outer edge, was her biological grandmother's name, and beneath that, only a dotted line. Lily stared at it. She could fill in that blank. She pulled out her phone and typed a message to Victor. "This is Lily. I'd like to know more about the Von Keller family, about my grandmother. Please don't contact anyone else yet. Just me." She hit send, then turned off the phone and placed its screen down. Upstairs, Julia tossed in her sleep, haunted by thoughts of strangers claiming her son. In the guest room, James lay awake, remembering stories his mother used to tell about a castle on a hill and a sister who ran away from noble blood. He'd never believed her, not really. And in Sam's room, the boy lay curled under his blanket, sketchbook still open beside him. On the newest page, he had drawn a castle, with a small boy standing in front of it. But the boy was alone. The next morning, Julia stood on the porch as the sun rose. Ethan joined her silently, handing her a mug of coffee. "Did we just get our son back, only to lose him again?" she asked. Ethan shook his head. "Not if I can help it." "Do we tell him?" "Not yet," he said softly. "Let's find out what's real first." But as they turned back toward the door, it swung open. Lily stood there, phone in hand. "I need to tell you something," she said. They froze. "I contacted Victor. I asked to see the full records about the Von Keller estate. I think they're not just interested in Sam." Julia stared at her. "What do you mean?" Lily held up the paper. Her voice cracked. "I think I'm the heir they're really after." The porch fell into silence again, and behind them Sam stepped outside just in time to hear everything. The moment Sam heard the words, he stopped in his tracks. The mug of hot chocolate he had carefully carried in both hands slipped and crashed to the porch floor, shattering into ceramic shards. Everyone turned. Julia, Ethan, Lily, all eyes snapping to the little boy, now standing frozen at the doorway, his eyes wide and confused. "You said they were looking for me," he whispered, his voice cracking. "You said I was the heir." Lily's face paled. "Sam, you lied?" His voice was higher now, panicked. "Was I just a mistake?" Julia rushed to him. "No, baby. No one lied to you." But Sam took a step back from her touch. "Then why is she saying it's her? Why didn't anyone tell me?" Ethan knelt beside him. "Because we didn't know. We didn't expect this. Lily just found out. We're still trying to understand it too." Sam turned to Lily, tears brimming. "You promised. You said you were just here to meet me. But now you're going to take everything." Lily stepped closer, hands trembling. "I swear, Sam, I didn't mean to hurt you. I've never had a family. And when they said there might be something connected to my past, I just wanted to know if any of it was true." Julia's voice was calm but taut. "What exactly did Victor tell you?" Lily held up her phone. "He confirmed what I suspected. That James's biological grandmother had a second daughter, a child born in secret, my birth mother's mother. Not Sam's grandmother, mine. That would make me a direct descendant of the Von Kellers." Ethan stood, his mind working rapidly. "So Sam isn't in the line?" Lily shook her head. "Not directly. James was never officially on record, but through me, and only me, there's a clean, traceable connection. Victor said the estate was hoping it was Sam for the sake of the story. But it's me." Julia exhaled sharply, pulling Sam into her arms despite his resistance. "You are ours. You are not a story or a headline or a title." Sam buried his face in her shoulder, crying silently now. James finally spoke, stepping toward Lily. "Did he offer you anything?" Lily hesitated. "A meeting with the family's trustees in Berlin next month." Ethan's voice hardened. "Did you accept?" I said I'd think about it, she whispered. Julia looked at her. Then think very carefully. Because no matter what they offer, if Sam loses trust in you, you'll never get it back. Lily nodded slowly, shame washing over her face. Sam lifted his head and looked at her. If they pick you, can I still be your brother? Lily's eyes welled up. Of course. I didn't come here to take anything. I came to find you, and I found you. But even as they hugged, Julia's gaze turned toward Ethan. Whatever this is turning into, she said, we're going to need help. Ethan nodded grimly. Because if the Von Kellers wanted Lily, they would soon come for her, and they wouldn't take no for an answer. The next few days blurred into a strange kind of stillness, too quiet, as if the world were holding its breath. Julia tried to restore a sense of normalcy. She cooked Sam's favorite meals, walked with him through the fields, and kept the news off. Ethan made calls to legal teams overseas and hired a private investigator to confirm Victor Holland's claims. Lily spent most of her time in the guest room, hardly speaking, unsure whether to stay or run. James, meanwhile, sat with Emily and drew out every memory he could recall about his grandmother's mysterious sister. She was always the family secret, he told her. My mother said she disappeared in the middle of the night and married a poet in Prague. No one ever confirmed it. But I think she's the connection, Lily's link. But as the pieces aligned, a strange thing happened. Sam grew quieter. He still smiled, still sat at the table, still played with the animals outside, but he spoke less and drew less. On the fourth morning, Ethan found Sam sitting in the barn, alone, staring at an unfinished drawing. Ethan knelt beside him. Hey, buddy, what's this one? Sam turned the sketchbook around. The picture showed two houses, one small, like their farmhouse, the other tall and fancy, like a castle, and between them, a little boy, alone. Ethan swallowed. You're not going to lose her, you know, Lily. Sam shrugged. She's going to Germany. No one's decided anything yet. Sam looked up. If she's a princess, and I'm not, does that mean she's not my real sister anymore? Ethan shook his head. Family isn't about who wears a crown. It's about who stays when things get messy. Sam's voice dropped to a whisper. I don't want anyone to leave. Ethan smiled gently. Me neither. Later that evening, they gathered around the dinner table. Julia, Ethan, Sam, James, Lily, and Emily. It was quiet at first, the clinking of forks and spoons louder than the conversation. Then Julia looked at Lily. Have you made your decision? Lily set down her glass. No, but I'm leaning toward going. Not for the money. I need to understand where I came from. Ethan nodded. Then we support that. Sam looked down at his plate. But I want to come back, Lily added quickly. This family means more than some European last name. I promise, Sam, I'm not leaving you. James leaned forward. And you won't go alone. I'll go with you. Lily blinked. You'd do that? You're my daughter, he said. Finally, I'm not missing your beginning. Sam looked up. Can we call? Every day? Lily smiled. You better. But just as the warmth returned, Ethan's phone buzzed. He stepped into the next room to answer. A minute later, he returned, pale. Julia stood. What happened? Ethan looked around the table. That was the investigator. What did they find? James asked. Ethan's voice was grave. There's no record of Victor Holland in any law group. No firm, no government contact. The name doesn't exist. The room fell silent, and slowly all eyes turned to Lily. Because the man she trusted might not be who he said he was, Lily's face drained of color. What do you mean, he doesn't exist? She whispered. Ethan stepped closer, holding out his phone. There's no Victor Holland registered as a legal representative, estate lawyer, or diplomat anywhere in Europe or the US. The credentials on his card were fabricated, even the number routes through a private server overseas. James stood, his hands shaking slightly. Are you saying this man was a fraud? Ethan nodded grimly. That's exactly what I'm saying. Julia's voice cut through the room like a blade. Then who was he working for? They all turned to Lily. I didn't know, she said desperately. He found me, said he was part of a legal firm looking into heritage claims. He showed me old family trees, photos. It all looked so real. Ethan paced the room, thoughts racing. This man got close enough to gather private DNA results, court documents, and infiltrated this house without raising a single alarm. That's not just a fraud, that's a strategy. James looked to Julia. Do you think this has something to do with your old life? The people who tried to buy your silence years ago? Julia frowned, thinking. Maybe, but this feels different, bigger. Someone went to great lengths to make this about legacy, bloodlines, nobility. Emily suddenly spoke up. What if it wasn't about Lily at all? They turned to her. What if he came for Sam? But when the records didn't support him as heir, he redirected the lie toward Lily. Ethan's jaw clenched. He used Lily to get close to Sam. That would explain the early pictures, the push for an interview, the sudden leak to the press. Lily gasped softly. But why? Julia looked at her, eyes narrowing. Because Sam isn't just a kid on a farm anymore. Thanks to that interview, he became a symbol, the underdog son of a billionaire, the forgotten child who found his family. If someone wanted to exploit that, create a scandal, or worse. Ethan finished her sentence. They could ruin all of us. James sat heavily. We let him into our home, we let him near our children. Lily trembled. I trusted him. Sam stepped forward quietly. So, I'm not a prince? Ethan knelt beside him. Nobody, but you're still the strongest kid I've ever known. Julia touched his shoulder. And you're loved. Nothing about that changes. Lily looked toward the window, her eyes hardening. If he tricked me, used me, I want to help find him. Ethan nodded. We will. I've already got a cyber team tracking the call route. He left digital footprints. James stood. And I know people in Europe, historians, archivists. We'll dig. Julia turned to Lily. We protect Sam, together. No more secrets, no more surprises. Lily nodded, her voice steadier. Agreed. But outside, down the road, a black car sat idle behind a line of trees. Inside, a man with sharp eyes reviewed a photo on his phone. It was a drawing, a boy, a farmhouse, a crown crossed out in red ink. He smiled faintly and made a call. It's time to move. The days that followed felt like living under siege. Though the press had mostly quieted, thanks to Ethan's lawyers and a sharp rebuke from Marissa Chen's follow-up piece, the sense of unease never left. 2 security officers now patrolled the perimeter of the farm. Cameras were installed, phone calls were monitored, but no one could erase the feeling that they'd been watched long before any of it began. Inside the farmhouse, tension thickened. Julia barely slept. Ethan worked late into the night on encrypted calls. Sam began drawing less, then not at all. Even James and Lily, once hopeful about what they had found in each other, grew distant. Then one morning, Julia found an envelope tucked under the front door. No return address. She opened it slowly, her hands trembling. Inside was a photo. It was Sam, sleeping, in his bed. The timestamp was from 2 nights ago. Julia screamed. Ethan ran in, saw the photo and went still. Then, without a word, he called the security team. James, Lily and Emily gathered in the kitchen as 2 guards swept the house, room by room. Every window was checked, every door resecured. But there was no sign of forced entry, no fingerprints, no clue. Julia held Sam close, her heart pounding. He was in our house. Ethan nodded grimly. Or someone with access to our systems was. Lily looked pale. It was him, Victor, or whoever he is. Ethan turned to her. What else do you remember? Anything he said that didn't make sense? Lily closed her eyes, thinking. He asked me questions about the layout, said he was just curious, asked about where Sam slept. Julia's knees buckled. She sat down, holding Sam tightly in her lap. Ethan spoke to the room, his voice like steel. This isn't about inheritance. It never was. This is leverage. They want something from me. James nodded. Someone wants control over you. Over the Caldwell name, Ethan looked at Julia. Or worse, they want Sam as a pawn to control us. The investigator called back an hour later with news. Victor Holland was an alias. The real man behind the name had a trail of digital ghosts connecting him to offshore accounts, former intelligence contractors, and most disturbingly, a disgraced corporate rival of Ethan's from nearly a decade ago, a man named Bryce Tannen. Bryce tried to destroy me once, Ethan told Julia, and failed. Now he's coming after what I care about most. Julia stared at the photo of her sleeping son. Then he's already crossed a line he can't walk back from. Lily stood slowly. What do we do? Ethan looked at every face around the table. Now we stop waiting. He picked up his phone. We go to him. And behind Ethan, unnoticed in the chaos, Sam slipped quietly out the back door, because he had heard everything, and he had his own plan to protect the people he loved. The sun was just beginning to rise as Sam crept through the back field, his small frame ducking between tall grass and broken fence posts. He wore his old hoodie and carried only his sketchbook in a backpack. He didn't know exactly where he was going, but he knew why he was going. They were all scared and tired and whispering in circles about people who wanted to take him away or hurt his family. He couldn't stand it anymore, so he decided he would end it, alone. He remembered the address Lily had accidentally said out loud, the hotel where Victor, or whoever he really was, had supposedly first met her. Sam didn't understand everything, but he knew how to search maps on the library computer. He'd watched Ethan and Julia do it dozens of times. The place wasn't far, just across the river. He could make it if he stayed off the roads. Meanwhile, back at the farmhouse, chaos erupted. "Sam's gone!" Julia screamed, running through the house. "He's not in his bed." Ethan dashed outside, calling his name into the trees. James checked the perimeter. Emily hacked into the house's security feed and found the moment he'd slipped past the camera blind spot. Julia's knees hit the porch. "No, no, no, please, not again." But Lily stood up fast, her eyes wide. "Wait, I think I know where he went." Within minutes, they were in the car, Julia, Ethan, and Lily, racing down the road, tracing Sam's likely path. Julia gripped the dash so tightly her knuckles went white. Sam reached the edge of town just after 7. The hotel sat quiet in the morning haze, its lot half empty. He walked through the lobby unnoticed, like a ghost. He rode the elevator to the second floor, room 204. That's what Lily had said. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Then the door opened. A man in a dark grey suit stood there. The same calm eyes, the same cool voice. "Well," he said, not surprised at all. "You're braver than I thought." Sam squared his shoulders. "Leave my family alone." Victor, or Bryce, or whoever he really was, smiled. "Why would I do that when they're the reason you came here?" Sam stepped back. "I'm not afraid of you." "You should be," the man said, "but I admire your courage." He reached into his coat pocket, slowly, deliberately. But before he could pull anything out, "Get away from him!" Ethan's voice roared down the hallway as he sprinted toward them, Julia just steps behind him. Victor turned in time to see Ethan slam into him, knocking him backward into the room. Julia grabbed Sam and pulled him close, trembling. Security stormed the hallway. Police sirens echoed from the street. Victor was pinned, and as officers took him into custody, he looked up at Ethan and smiled through bloodied lips. "You can't protect him forever." Ethan leaned close. "I only have to protect him today." Back home, hours later, Sam sat curled on the couch between Julia and Ethan, his eyes heavy, his heart safe. Lily brought him his sketchbook. He opened it to a fresh page. And this time he drew a house, not a castle, not a stranger's dream, just their farmhouse, with all of them inside, holding hands, and this time there was no crown, just a word written in bold above them: family.